All right, now that we've got our cube pretty much all rigged, we've got clusters on it and everything, I'm going to close this up. I just hold down Shift, and if I hold down Shift and open it up in the outliner, it'll expand all of the hierarchy. If I hold down Shift and close it, it'll close up all of the hierarchy. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to add some lighting cues to this and put a little shader on it. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add a ground plane. So I'm just going to get a polygon plane, and I'm going to scale it up to like, I don't know, we'll scale it up to like 40, huge, like so. And then you can see I've got this shadow under it already, and that's because in my renderer here, the viewport renderer, if I go to the little box, I have a couple things checked. The first thing I have checked is screen space ambient occlusion. If I open that up, you can see I've got it enabled, and if I turn it off, you see the shadow goes away. But I want to keep it enabled. I also have the sample set up to the highest level, which makes it just smoother. And if I set that down, it'll be quicker, but it's also, you can see it gets a little chunky. So I'm going to leave it at 32. The other thing I have turned on is anti-aliasing. And if I turn that off, you can see we get these kind of artifacts as it tries to draw a diagonal line. And if I turn this on, it smooths all that out and kind of fills in those gaps. Same thing, you can keep the samples up high or lower, whatever you want to do. The higher it is, the longer it takes to compute, but the prettier it looks. Anyways, it's not very expensive, so I'm leaving that on. And then I'm also going to add a light. Right now we are not showing lights, we're just using the default lighting. And if I hit the 7 key, you'll see everything turns black. So what I can do is I can hit the space bar, go to Create and Lights. If I turn on an ambient light, it kind of floods everything a solid color. And then if I have that ambient light selected and hit Control A, that'll bring up the attribute editor. And then I can just turn down the intensity a bit, put it down to 0.4. And then I'm going to add one more light. I'm going to hit the space bar again, go to Create again, Lights, and I'm going to get a directional light. And you can see it brings in this kind of set of arrows. And if I rotate that around, I can sort of just direct this infinity light source towards the cube. And we can get some interesting shading cues to help the scene just look a little bit more polished. The other thing you can do, I believe, is if you go under lighting here, you can turn on shadows. And then you see a nice shadow from the infinity light, which can be helpful. And I think you can even increase the quality of the shadow, but it's not necessary for this. So we're going to leave it as it is. There's one other thing I'm going to do for it. I'm going to select the cube, and I'm going to right click on it, and I'm going to go down to Assign Material, Assign New Material. And if I do that, I get a list of different materials I could assign to it. I'm just going to add a blend material. If I click on that, it brings up the attributes for our new blend material. And I'm going to call it box_BLN, because that's our blend. And then we'll give it a color. We'll maybe make this a bright red cube, or maybe just a little bit less saturated. And then if we scroll down here a little bit, or open this window up a bit, I'm going to turn off reflectivity, because that'll just increase the render times later on. I'm going to crank up the specular highlight. I'm going to turn up the roll-off, and then I'm going to sort of drop the eccentricity down. And you can see it's actually changing how the cube is lit in our viewport as well. So I'll just leave it in the middle. I think that looks kind of cool. And there we go. Now we have a lit cube on a floor. And if I want to make things a little bit more manageable in our scene file here, I can select the ground, for example, and over on the display layers, if I select this last option here, it's basically add the selected object to a layer. I'll click on that, give the layer a name, we'll call it floor, save that, and then I can put the floor in template mode, which makes it just a transparent grid, or I can put it in reference mode, which makes it not selectable. And that's handy if we're going to be mostly selecting this cube. The other thing I can do is so I don't have to look at this light all the time in my viewport while I'm animating. I can go over to my show options and just turn off, like I've turned off deformers here, you can see. I'm going to turn off lights as well, which is, of course, here. So that way the lights are still in the scene, they're still active, but I don't have to look at the icons for them. And you can do the same thing for everything. You could turn off, if you wanted to, you could just turn off the locators as well. Or sorry, not locators, where is it? Handles. So, then you only turn those on when you want to animate them, for example. That's it. That's all I've got.